It is the most powerful games machine in the world. It has a new controller that offers a different gaming experience, and it promises next-generation versions of some of the most popular titles ever. It's Nintendo's Ultra 64, and it was unveiled last week at the Shoshinki Show in Tokyo, along with demos of 13 games in development. And here exclusively for the first time on TV, all 13 of them.
The Nintendo 64 console has been the host of many wonderful games like Super Mario 64, the first Mario Party, Banjo Kazooie, Banjo Tooie, Kirby 64, GoldenEye, The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, but, unfortunately, like every game console, some games aren't that lucky, and they don't finish development. Hours of work put into nothing, leaving the game to fade into obscurity, and later to be completely forgotten. Well, not today! Yes, because I've decided to share with all of you all the information we know of every cancelled N64 game. But first, I'm gonna do some premises. First, the information I'm gonna give you are mainly based on the following sites: Nesworld, N64 Forever, and C64. Second, some of these games are unconfirmed, meaning that we don't have solid proof that the game in question was actually being developed for the console. So, for the sake of not repeating the same words every time, you'll find this tiny little box with essential information about the game, including its name, the developer, and if it's playable or not. If the game is unconfirmed, I'll write it on state, and if it's confirmed, I'll just write if it's playable or not. Got it? Okay, let's begin. 1080 Snowboarding 2, a cancelled sequel to the Great 1080 Snowboarding. The game was later resurrected as 1080 Avalanche for the GameCube, released in 2003. 360, a cancelled port for N64 of Cryo's Futuristic Racer. 40 Wings, aka Dream Story, or Rough and Tumble. 40 Wings is a platform game released on PS1. An N64 version, alongside a Game Boy Color version, were planned to be released, but never did, because of the initial poor sales on PS1. In 2008, a nearly finished build was leaked, and in 2022, the game was physically released by Pico Interactive. The game isn't really groundbreaking, it's just a 3D platformer of the era, but it's enjoyable. 64 Wars. 64 Wars is an unreleased entry in the Wars series, developed by Hudson Soft. Footage and gameplay of the game was shown at Space World 1999. The game was similar to the other entries in the series. You have a 2D map to traverse, but the battles are rendered in 3D. One thing that's interesting is that the Game Boy game Wars 2 could connect with 64 Wars, so you could unlock some features, like the ability to transfer match progress between the two consoles. The reason of the cancellation are unknown, but if I have to guess, it would be the year that it would release, probably the 2000s, or that it was too similar to other games in the series. Otherwise, the ability of transferring the save files from one console to the other sounded really cool and very advanced for the time. Acclaim Sports Soccer. Acclaim was a video game developer responsible for Extreme G, Forsaken, and Bust a Move Arcade Edition. This won't be the last time we'll meet this company. Anyway, at one point they tried to do a soccer game called Ultra Soccer. They changed it into Acclaim Sports Soccer, probably after the name of the console was changed from Nintendo Ultra 64 into Nintendo 64. It was set to compete with Konami's Superstar Soccer, and it was set to release in 1998, only in Europe, because soccer wasn't as popular as now in the US, but was pushed back to 1999, after EA released their own soccer game, forcing Acclaim to rework the game from the ground up. In 1999, the game switched to the Sports Quagmire engine, also used by All-Star Baseball, and would have gotten high-resolution graphics. Some features included the compatibility with the Rumble Pack and lots of game modes. In 1999, Acclaim were confident to release the game in August of that year, but after that, the game went silent. In 2004, after Acclaim got bankrupt, lots of CDs and tapes were sold. Some of them, acquired by a collector, had screenshots of the game and some unnamed features, such as N64DD hookups. Why the game was cancelled? The game wasn't as good as the probe intended it to be, or Superstar Soccer was just too much competition? Well, we don't have an answer yet. Maybe in the future we'll find the prototype of the game. The fact that it was almost completed meant that at least one prototype was made. so let's hope that in the future we'll find one of them. Aces of the UN. That's all I got to say. This is one of the unconfirmed cancelled games, and we haven't got anything to prove it existed. But we know the developer, Paradigm, responsible for Pilot Wing 64. So probably this game was a flight racing game, given they were specialized in that kind of games. Actua Golf 4, an early incarnation of PGA European Tour. Adam's Family Pinball. Around 1998, Digital Eclipse's webpage revealed that they were working on a pinball game based on one of the best pinball machines ever, the Adams Family one. A strange choice of platform considering that the N64 didn't receive any pinball game in his lifespan. It had also some classic arcade games like Defender. Why? It was planned to release on PC and N64 in 1998, and a PS1 release was considered. Apparently this was a really ambitious game. A 90,000 polygon 3D model was built with intention of scaling it down on the selected platform of the release, and the physics were also as realistic as possible. It also used motion capture for the ball. Unfortunately, in mid-progress, the publisher abandoned the project after the viability of the game was reconsidered. No screenshots of the game were released, because there weren't any. At the time of cancellation, the only things completed were the model of the table, the physics engine, and the emulator of the electronics, and nothing else. It would have been cool to have this game. I don't know, I'm not an expert of pinball games, so tell me what you think. Ion Flux. So, I found conflicting information about the game, so I'm not 100% sure of what I'm about to say. GT Interactive and the Collector Inc., or Cryo, the developer isn't quite clear, were working on this game. It would have been on PlayStation, PC, Sega Saturn, and of course on N64. It was a tie-in to the animated series of the same name, and was loosely based on one of the episodes called The Demiurge, and was going to be published by Viacom. Commercials of the game were included in the 1996 VHS release of the animated series. Viacom New Media would merge with Virgin Interactive mid-development, leaving Cryo with no rights to use Ion Flux's license. However, the game was revoked into Pax Corpus that used basically all of the things that were going to be used in Ion Flux. A prototype of the game for the PS1 version was found. Air Demons. It was developed by Sunsoft USA. It was set to release in 1998. That's all I've got to say. Airboarding 64. Just an early version of the game Airboarder 64. Airport Inc. Telestar's managerial simulator for PC was going to be released on N64. The game was going to use full advantage of the N64 capabilities, but this port went nowhere. Even with doubts, it even entered development on N64. Alien 64, an unconfirmed remake of Alien Trilogy, a tie-in game for Sega Saturn, PSX, and PC. Alone in the Dark 4. I don't even know what they're talking about. Andretti Racing. Who is Andretti? Animal Leader or Double 2 Banjo. Animal Leader is the N64 version of Football, released on GameCube in 2001. The N64 version was scrapped in favor of the GameCube version, because the game would have been released at the end of the N64 lifespan. Nonetheless, a ROM was found and dumped, making this version playable. Animaniacs 10-Pin Alley, a cancelled port of a simple bowling game with the Animaniacs license. Aquaria. This is actually a bit of a bummer that we haven't gotten it. Lobotomy Software was working at, as they would describe it, a game similar to Nights into Dreams, but underwater and in 3D. Another company called Enix was converting it to PlayStation. Computer and Video Games magazine said that the game had beautiful graphics and ran at full 60 FPS, but probably confused it with Aqua Prophecy, another cancelled Enix game. An interview between Unseen64 and Brian McNeely, ex-developer of Lobotomy Software, revealed that they had a full demo of Aquaria running on PlayStation, and the character was a mermaid alien-like character. You could do dolphin-like aerobics to move in the environment. He said that it was similar to Echo the Dolphin Defender of the Future. In 1998, Lobotomy was acquired by Crave Entertainment, who made them work on Caesar's Palace, another scrapped game on N64. The cancellation of Caesar's Palace killed off Lobotomy, which was dismantled, and the developers were transferred to Crave, which also died in 2005. This is a shame. This won't be the last time we'll encounter Lobotomy, because they have other unreleased games, and every game on the list sounded interesting. What could have been? Area 54 Site 4. What the f- Ascension. What is this thing? Ocean, what was it? Assault. Despite being in the confirmed section of Network, I couldn't find any information on it. Astro Mouse. A really obscure cancelled game by Rare. The main character, a mouse, was later redesigned and became Pixie, who was used in Diddy Kong Racing. Attack. DMA Design envisioned this game as a spiritual successor of Lemmings. There basically isn't any other information except for a few images, and that it was set in the prehistory, and the protagonist was going to be a caveman that could tame various creatures and use them to advance in the game. Bad Company, supposedly in the works by Antonio Barnes, the same game designer who worked on Air Demons that we already saw, and Future Strike. Battle Dancer, presented by Konami in E3 1997, but then abandoned the project without any explanation. I don't even know what type of game this was. Battle Royale.
Who?
Sport 2 or Battle Sports N64, an early version of Battle Sports made by Cyclone Studios for N64 that later became Battle Tanks. Initially, the company wanted to port Battle Sports on N64, but in very early stages of development, they questioned if the N64 was the right console to have the game, so they combined multiplayer with indestructible environment and Battle Tanks was born. Battle Sport 2 would finally release on PS1 with the title Uprising X. Bio Tetris. Tetris 64 has 3 game modes, including one compatible with a biosensor for some reasons. Well, this mod was originally a game of its own, called simply Bio Tetris, but was scrapped, probably after realizing that no one would have bought a biosensor on N64 to play a game that could only be played with it. Bioswarm. During the development of Battlesport 2, an altered version of the game with another name was developed for a brief time, but went nowhere. Birdie. It was the codename of a golf tech demo made by Codemasters. It probably was never intended to be a full game. Blade and Barrel, or Ultra Combat. Developed by Kemco and Software Creation, and intended to be one of the launch titles for N64, Blade and Barrel was an arcade-inspired third-person shooter focused on battles between flying vehicles, and the multiplayer mode supporting up to 4 players. In the footage that we have, we can see a simple 3D arena, with some buildings and roads, but at the time, these were considered really good graphics. The weapons were able to create large explosions that would fill up all the screen. Unfortunately, the game kept getting delayed, probably for the gameplay that wasn't all that engaging or fun, and stopped development altogether. Some aspects of the game have been reused on Night Edge, another game from Kemco released in 1998. Bloodshot. Bloodshot is a comic book superhero, I don't know anything else of him, and apparently there was a cancelled game for PlayStation 1 being developed, but then got scrapped. Probably there was an N64 version planned too, but I'm not sure of it. Blues and Clues. I don't know. Boogie Boogie. This is a strange one. One of the first N64 titles to be announced, Boogie Boogie saw many different changes during its development. Revealed for the first time in Shoshinkai in 1995, it was conceived as a dark combat racing game. It was also described as a DNA-based driving game. Your vehicle could destroy other vehicles, and with that you could morph and gain extra powers. The terrains which you would battle in had many different hazards like tornadoes, anti-gravity and wind. Multiplayer was also implemented. Mid-development, Shigeru Miyamoto joined the development of the game, leading to a new direction of the project completely. The game went silent until some gaming journals started posting photos of a complete reboot of the project that looked more cartoony and strangely similar to an N64 sequel/version of the SNES game Stunt Effects, but still with the core concept of morphing in place. In 1998, the project went silent for good, after Nintendo themselves put the plug on the project, and Angel would end up developing the port of Resident Evil 2 on N64. We know that the cartoony version was about 50% completed before being shelved. Would it be fun if we got it? Absolutely, specifically the cartoony version. The whole concept of racing and building and powering up your car while racing sounds cool as hell, and no games have utilized this concept before. The closest I can think of is probably Crash Tag Team Racing, where you could merge your vehicle with another player mid-race, but you can't change the appearance of the car, so I think this would have been the first to utilize this idea. Caesar's Palace. After Lobotomy Software, remember them right, was bought by Crave Entertainment, they immediately went working on Caesar's Palace, based on the homonym rail casino located in Las Vegas. We can see from the screenshots that we have that the game had good graphics and Lobotomy recreated the entire palace on N64 picture perfectly. Now, I'm not an expert, but I believe this is really impressive. The game offered instant play and multiplayer. Obviously, included roulettes, blackjacks, slot machines, and so on. However, the most interesting feature is the adventure mode. You could win an enormous amount of money until the owners of the casino would challenge you to a winner-takes-all bet, where you could win the entire casino. The title was cancelled probably because Crave didn't want to take a big financial risk with a game that was gonna release on a console that was gonna be dead pretty soon. Lobotomy Software was shut down instantly after the cancellation and the employees went working in other departments of Crave. California Speed European version. The European version of California Speed was developed but never released. Nonetheless, a ROM of the European version has been found, so you can play it. Canberra Fighter, a 2D fighting game cancelled after the developer got bankrupt. Carnival, Census Adventure. This is gonna be a fun one. So, do you know Carnival? Probably not. It is an obscure animated movie released in 1999. It was directed by Dean Taylor, the art director of Nightmare Before Christmas. The movie went lost media for a long time, after randomly getting found and posted to archive.org, then taken down and then put up again, for everybody to see it. Please download it, just in case, It tells the story of a bunch of kids getting trapped in a magical amusement park, and how they need to escape before turning into attractions. And that's about it. If we're curious, a YouTuber named Aim by Frame made a really good video about the movie. In 1999, a tie-in video game for N64 and a portable version on Game Boy Color were set to release in the 2000s, but never did. In 2020, a finished prototype of the Game Boy Color version was found, but it isn't the center of our attention in this video. On March 5th, 2022, the E3 prototype of the N64 version was found. The game stars Senzo, one of the protagonists of the movie, that completes various attractions of the park in order to free his friends. Completing attractions will get you coins needed to proceed in the game. To reportedly 50 to 60% in development, the game can still be finished. Why was it cancelled? For many reasons. The film which the game is based on never left Europe and never had a large distribution. Vatican Entertainment not having much money, the fact that the game would have released on December 2000s are only some of the reasons of its cancellation. Anyway, cancelling this game killed its makers, Tetraglyph and Vatican, and also killed its GBC counterpart. If completed, the game would have been fun, I'm sure of it. Mini games on a magical amusement park? Heck yeah! But at the same time, it wouldn't be perfect. The minigames probably would have get annoying over time, and the racing part looks like a ripoff of Mario Kart. Well, maybe it would have become a hidden gem, who knows. Categorized. Categorized is a very mysterious cancelled N64 game. It was shown at E3 2000 and disappeared right after the event. From the footage that we have, it seems like a video game inspired by Tom and Jerry, where a cat constantly tries to catch the mouse but fails every time. Well, in this case, the cat is brutally tortured in many ways. But still, there isn't any information on what type of game this was, neither do Nintendo, since they were just told to put it there at the event. The footage that was shown is a tech demo, and that only features various scenarios and animations of the cat and mouse feud. The only things we also know are some screenshots that feature some scenarios of the demo and some characters, like the cat and mouse, but also a white singing cat, a rat queen, and a deranged cat. The game was probably cancelled because of the release of the GameCube. Nonetheless, the graphics are really impressive for the N64. It could have been great. Cavalry Battle 3000, a really obscure canned N64 title. It was in development by Japan System Supply. It seems to be a racing game with elements similar to Road Rush, where you fight opponents while trying to finish the race. We literally don't have nothing else. Centipede X. A part of the popular arcade game was in the works, but quickly scrapped. Climber, aka Zenith. Developed by DMA Design, Climber was said to be an action racing game hybrid set to release early in the console's life. It was only name-dropped in some video game magazines, and due to the scarcity of information, some people thought that it was a new Ice Climbers game, but obviously it wasn't true. The game was a racing game, yes, but really strange in concept. You control a variety of different creatures like aliens and humans, and the goal is to reach the top of various towers, each with different themes, like Far West and Medieval. While racing, there would be various obstacles to overcome, by using each character's abilities. In addition to the obstacles, you also needed to fight in order to arrive at the top. All characters had 2 attacks and a 3rd special attack. The game had to stop development when all of DMA Design went finishing development on Body Harvest. We don't have any screenshot of the game, but we do have some images of the characters, although not perfectly. In this image we can find one of the developers of the Climber, Richard Raffle, and behind him there are some characters of the game. In this texture find into the files of Body Harvest, we can also find some of the characters. We also have a sketch of one level, and this is all that we have. Condemned. Who? Conker's Quest. Well, what do we have here? So, you might be familiar with the game called Conker's But Day, a game developed by Rare and one of the only mature-rated games on N64. The game is fantastic. You control Conker, this red squirrel that meets various characters and gets some serious situations while trying to get home.
Me. I am the great mighty Pooh.
That's just a reminder that these guys are the same who did the Banjo Kazooie series, Donkey Kong Country, Donkey Kong 64, Diddy Kong Racing, and GoldenEye. The game is fantastic, like as I said, and it's one of the most unique games you'll ever get to play. But you'll be surprised to know that this game wasn't supposed to be like this. It originally started out as a cute little platformer called Conker's Quest. Conker's Quest, later renamed into 12 Days Conker 64, was first shown at E3 1997 as an adorable little platformer for kids, which was developed by the same people who made Killer Instinct, saying that they wanted to take a break from all of that violence. But let's just say that their Killer Instinct made a role in this game later on. Anyway, the plot was simple. Conker and his girlfriend Barry were on a mission to collect all of 100 presents taken by the evil hoodlums. No, not those, these ones, and scattered around 4 massive worlds: Kaku Village, Popcorn Mice, Windmill Pasture, and an active volcano. Windmill Pasture allowed Conker and Barry to travel into an ancient Rome level, a Wild Wild West level, and an ancient time level with dinosaurs. We all know how this ended, huh? One of the most notable features of the game was a so-called emotion system that would allow the main characters to react to the situations surrounding them, like the final product, but much more utilized. It was even described as a Disney cartoon on console. Really cool stuff! So why was it cancelled? Well, take a guess. One, the game costed too much to make. 2, the game had development issues behind doors. Or 3, the game was too cutesy. Well, if you picked number 2, you were wrong! The right answer was the third option. After Rare was criticized after making another cute platformer, in fact BK was going to be released pretty closely to its intended release date, Rare delayed the game indefinitely, and at E3 2000, Conker's Bad Fur Day was revealed for the first time. The whole story is crazy. An almost completed game was killed in favor of a mature version of itself. I love Bad Fur Day, but I'd love to see 12 Days. A prototype of 12 Days was found, but it didn't work for some reason. I don't even know if it's true, but anyway, Rare and the co-founder of the company, Tim Stamper, still have copies of the game, given that they both have released footage. Would have been fun to play this game? Absolutely. But we wouldn't have Bad Fur Day, so who knows? Maybe it's better that it ended up this way. Conscripts. Software Creations, the same ones of Blade and Barrel, were developing an action strategy game called Conscripts. The game was described as Defender in 3D with helicopters and tanks. Supposedly, we needed to guide some soldiers into safety using helicopters and tanks through various battlefields. An idea was to have these micro soldiers in a big 3D area, but they never got to develop anything. The game was scrapped really quickly after Software Creations realized that they couldn't possibly develop 50 games simultaneously on the same console, so many games including this one were scrapped. Contra Spirits, an N64 version of Contra Spirits by Konami, set to release in 1997, cancelled because of the system's poor sale in Japan. Really? The N64 did poorly in Japan? Why? And I discovered this now! Crazy Cajun Carl. I hope I pronounced it right. Action-adventure game in development by GameTech. An artist by the name Mimi Doggett Rombegger posted some concept art of the game. Other than that, there seems to be no other information about this game. Crusaders of Might and Magic. A part of the Dio's game on N64. I don't know anything else. Wonpa. This puzzle game by TNA Soft was going to have an N64 version in addition to the PS1 and SNES versions. The reason for its cancellation is unknown. D-Jump. Oh, a juicy one. D-Jump was a 3D platformer by Ubisoft. It featured a Rastafarian boy who is transported in ancient Egypt and transformed into a wood puppet-like version of himself. Initially, we didn't have any footage of the game, aside from a concept video, but recently a video with 30 seconds of gameplay was uploaded to YouTube. We also know some more things that were going to be in the game. Woody here could throw simple objects at enemies like fruits or stones, explode his own freaking body, and use telekinetic powers, like Silver. You could also enter in conversation with the locals, choosing what type of mood you wanted to have in the conversation. In addition to this, you could also track down your love interest through a heartbeat and a groove mode, which acted like a rhythm minigame. We don't exactly know why the game's title was D-Jump. Some people say that it was simply a placeholder, but others say that it was linked to the ability that the character would have to return home. Anyway, the game was cancelled. After that, all of Ubisoft went to develop Rayman 2. So, was cancelled the game the right decision? Well, yeah, I freaking love Rayman 2, but I'll admit that I would love to see a prototype of this game. Maybe it will resurface one day. Dead Ahead was quite interesting. Tommy funded the game and hired Optical Entertainment to design the game, and Software Creations, again, to develop the game. The idea was to have free roaming in large environments, fighting, puzzle solving, and vehicles. Given that the game was funded by Tommy, the main idea was to sell merchandise of the game once releasing it. According to Hayden Dalton, one of the developers of the game, nobody wanted to do the project. We don't know the reason as of why the project was abandoned. Probably the game was just too ambitious for the N64 or that nobody wanted to do the game, but one thing is sure, the merchandise was cancelled. A very early prototype of the game was showcased by one of the developers, Chris Young, on his YouTube channel. Honestly, the game sounded really cool, but unfortunately it was shelved, with the developer saying that the prototype is probably all that remains of the game. I'm afraid that this will be the end for Dead Ahead. Deadly Honor, a cancelled game starring Steven Seagal. Yes, that's Steven Seagal. It was announced very early in the N64 lifespan, and it was going to be developed by TechMagic. TechMagic was also developing another game starring Steven Seagal, called The Final Option for the SNES, but it was also cancelled. The N64 game was also in development for the PS1. Given that we don't have any other information, the game could have been canned very early into its production. Dear Blue. Quietly announced in early 1998, Dear Blue was an RPG game by Konami for the N64. Once again, we don't know anything about this game, but we can guess what could have become of the game. It was canned, most probably it was this one, the title was a wrong translation of something else, or it was shelved on N64 and released on another console. Dear Hunter 64, perhaps a hunting game for N64? But it probably was just a wrong translation. No other information is known. Derby Day, a quietly cancelled RPG made by Chunsoft. Descent 64, a port of Descent 1 for N64, cancelled to make the team focused on making the third installment on PC. The Strager. Who? Death Carts, futuristic racer by Melbourne House, was going to have an N64 port by Beam Software, but it was cancelled due to the acquisition of Beam by Infogrames, who cancelled the game straight away after the acquisition. Die Hard 64, aka Muzzle Velocity, initially being an FPS called Muzzle Velocity, then was reworked to be based on the Die Hard movie series. The game was then carried over to the next generation of consoles, becoming Die Hard Vendetta. Prototypes of the game resurfaced in 2017. Dinosaur Planet, perhaps the holy grail of found N64 games. I'm pretty sure you know Star Fox Adventures, first and only Rare developed title for the GameCube before being bought by Microsoft. It's a controversial game for sure. First, criticism is towards the fact that it's basically a Zelda clone, albeit a pretty good one. And second, that having Star Fox here is like putting Mario in Call of Duty. They are completely different genres and don't mesh well with each other. Nonetheless, the game received positive reviews, mainly for the graphics, and for the fact that it ran at full 60 FPS. Of course, somebody knows why the game ended up like this, but for the people who don't know, allow me to blow your mind. We're in 1997, Diddy Kong Racing, another game made by Rare, is released. A fun kart racing game featuring Diddy Kong, Banjo, and Conker before turning in an alcoholic squirrel. Among the best cast of characters, there was one in particular that was called Timber the Tiger. Now, Diddy Kong Racing was set originally to be a sequel to the RC Pro AM series, featuring as mascot for the game Timber the Tiger. When the game transitioned to Diddy Kong Racing, the team attached Timber and wanted to try and give him another chance on one game. So Rare began development on this new game starring Timber and went through many different kind of versions before dropping him again entirely and replaced him with two new characters, Saber and Crystal. Rare finally showed the game at E3 2000. The game was said to have two massive campaigns, different based on what of the two characters was selected, that would take you on a quest to reach one goal, save Dinosaur Planet. To do that, you would have traveled into beautiful environments, changing weather conditions, day and night cycles, changing expression for the characters, a complex story, bizarre characters, zero loading screens, and full voice acting. All of that on a simple 512 MB cartridge. The game was one of the most ambitious games that would ever released on the N64, or heck, gaming in general. But only 2 months later, the GameCube was announced, making the future of the game uncertain. When all of the people lost hope for the release of the game, behind doors the team was making something big. At the same E3 that the game was shown, Rare showed the game to Nintendo, and
Star Fox? Well, actually, Star Fox. God damn it.
for some ungodly reason, Miyamoto watched Saber and said that he looked similar to Fox, and suggested to replace Saber with Fox McCloud and transition the game into the Star Fox universe, and thus Star Fox Adventures was released, and probably was one of the worst decisions Nintendo ever made. In 2021, a near-complete proto of the game was found and released. Oh my god, this is beautiful. So, how's the game? fantastic as expected. Rare wasn't joking, this looks amazing. I don't have any words to say, this is just beautiful. As soon as we started the game, we see many differences with the final game. Crystal is boarding the ship of General Scales to free Princess Kyle, rather than boarding at random. She then goes into this temple, finds some dead dinosaurs, finds her dead, and then teleports away. Encounters Zwapson and then...
I sure hope Randon's right about this place. If the prince doesn't turn up soon, I think I might freeze to death.
Why is Fox here? We can understand that Rare tried to replace Saber Model with Fox in this build, and for some reason I found that to be more appealing than Sabers. I don't know why, probably because I like Star Fox Adventures and Fox... I attached to Fox, but I don't know. Then Fox finds and rescues Tricky.
Shut up! Hey, Scaleface! Pick on someone your own size! What? Who's that? I am Fox McCloud, Royal Knight of the Lilat System. I've come to take the prince back to his home?
Saves his mother and then swaps back to Crystal. And then you can explore freely. I did the plot really quickly because this video is already big enough as it is, but just know that I've left a lot more information out there about plot, characters, levels, and well, everything. So I linked to you the video by Jackstalgia on the game. Now, for the big question, should Dinosaur Planet have stayed on N64 as a standalone game without Star Fox? Sure, is what I would say if GameCube version was bad, but it isn't. Yes, there's only one main campaign, we didn't get to play anything besides the intro for Crystal's campaign and other things, but was Star Fox Adventures a bad game? No. But on the other side, the game would have been more complete if it stayed on N64 and maybe revolutionized the genre, so I don't know. Doom Absolution, a cancelled spin-off of the Doom series focused on 4 players multiplayer. The game was cancelled only to allow the team to do the conversions of Quake 1 and 2 for N64. Dragon Dance.
Who?
Dragon Sword, a 3D hack-and-slash action-adventure game, was announced in 1998, developed by Interactive Studios and set in a fantasy world called Avantaria, where a group of 4 heroes had to stop the evil plans of Sirius the Mage. 2 players could jump in and play simultaneously. There were 4 characters in total to choose to play with, and everyone had their specific attacks. The game played similarly to Gauntlet Legend 64, where there were generators of monsters that you would destroy to stop the enemies from respawning and proceeding into the level. There were 9 levels in total and a deathmatch and time trial mode. The game was cancelled after MGM, the publisher, said that it wouldn't sell enough to gain profits, despite the English 64 magazine giving the game a 93% in their review. Our prototype was found and dumped in 2010. Earthbound 64, aka Mother 3. Earthbound, or Mother if you prefer, is a series of strange and weird RPGs released on NES, SNES and GBA. The most popular, Earthbound for the SNES, featured Ness and his group of friends trying to stop the invasion of the evil alien Gygas and to stop him from taking over the galaxy. You'll probably remember Ness from his inclusion in Smash Bros, but there's another character who's similar to Ness. He is Lucas. Lucas is the protagonist of Mother 3, the sequel of Earthbound, which was released only in Japan on the Game Boy Advance. But Mother 3 wasn't supposed to be a GBA title, but rather an N64 game. Mother 3 began development on the SNES, but was quickly moved on to the N64 DD, and then moved to a normal N64 cartridge, after the N64 DD's future was uncertain. The plot was set 200 years in the future from Earthbound, in a futuristic western world, and centered around the family of the cowboy Flint, his wife Hinoa, and their children Klaus and Lucas, that had to stop the evil pig army to take over the world. A playable demo was presented as Spaceward 1999, that also showed footage of the game, but it all went down from here. Shigesato Itoi and his team were very inexperienced with the development of 3D games, and the development consequentially suffered. It got to the point that even different developers of other games, like the people of Pokémon Stadium, went to help the development of Mother 3. The game from here kept getting delayed until it was officially cancelled. Miyamoto wanted to save the game, but since the GameCube was going to be released shortly after, he couldn't do anything. In 2003, Mother 1+2 was released on GBA, developed by Brownie Brown. Shortly after its release, the same developers took the original N64 project and remaked it for the GBA. While the graphics were obviously altered from 3D to 2D, the story was almost intact. Could have the game been better if it stayed on N64? I don't know. Personally, I've never played any game of the series. Well, sort of. I bought Earthbound SNES when it was little for the 3DS, but I stopped playing after like 10 minutes because at the time I couldn't understand English. So who knows? Maybe one day I'll play it. Eco Delta. This game was going to be one of the few real-time strategy games on N64. The objective of the game was to recover a big sunken ship using a little submarine, while obtaining energy from the ocean's bed with the same submarine. With this energy, you could upgrade the submarine using a machine called Core, but the core could be attacked by enemies, so you needed to defend it by placing turrets or other things. Even if almost completed, Eco Delta was canned, probably because the game would have been released too late into the console's life. On July 2006, a prototype of the game was sold on eBay, but it hasn't leaked on the internet. Since the game was almost completed, more prototypes may have been created, so let's hope that one of these gets leaked. Before we go to the other game, you're probably wondering why I'm showing you this high quality footage, since the ROM hasn't been leaked. Well, the gameplay that I'm showing is from a channel called Oliver Yu, and I believe that this is the channel of the person who acquired the prototype back in 2006, but nobody knows why the person didn't upload it to the internet. Edie, can we stop to have cancelled games with no information at all? Egghead Shred. Egghead, no, not him, was Paradigm Entertainment's mascot. At one point, a skiing tech demo was created featuring him as a playable character. The particularity of this demo was how Egghead, you again, go away! Was how Egghead was controlled. The audience present at the showing of the demo controlled Egghead with a motion sensing technology. The demo was probably never meant to be a full game. Eternal Darkness. The extremely underrated GameCube game Eternal Darkness Sanity's Requiem was originally supposed to be on N64. The development was almost completed, but it ended up being released on GameCube. The game is similar to the GameCube version, but there are some differences. The game, instead of taking 7 to 9 hours to complete with 2 endings, the N64 games would take from 80 to 90 hours to complete. At least that's what the Lost Media Wiki tells me. Now, I don't know if this is true, but no, this can't be true, simply not! Honestly, I prefer the game on GameCube. I think it would be cool to see the original version. Exhumed 64. Who? Extreme Sports 64, a sports game developed by Innerloop, was released on Dreamcast, but an N64 version was supposed to be released. Eidos was initially the publisher of both versions, but when the deal fell through, Infogrames was chosen instead. When the game released on Dreamcast, it was in the 2000s, the N64 version was scrapped, probably because of the release date of the port. No footage resurfaced. F-18 Super Hornet, an air combat game cancelled in the early stages of development. It was set to be published by Titus, the same ones of Superman 64. F1 98, a Formula 1 game only released on PlayStation. A port for N64 was planned, but later got cancelled after the developer, Psygnosis, was acquired by Sony. F1 World Grand Prix 3, another Formula 1 game? Oh well, it was set to be a sequel to the F1 World Grand Prix series, but it was cancelled because it could have been released in early 2001, and Paradigm was doing badly after the poor sales of the previous games. The game was basically finished. FIFA 2000s. The 2000 version of FIFA was released on PS1, but the N64 version was cancelled. Final Fantasy 64. So, I'm sure you know Final Fantasy 7. Well, this isn't related to that. I'm sure you will recognize this tech demo. This was just a test that Squaresoft made for N64. You probably remember some rumors around that said that the original FF7 was going to be on N64, but for internal reasons, Squaresoft switched the game to Sony, or that FF7, if it stayed on N64, was going to have like a billion cartridges to play the game, because it was very massive. Well, no. Officially, no FF games were planned on N64. Maybe someone pitched originally the idea, but it's very unlikely. Final Round 64, a golf game made by Konami, scrapped in the early stages of development. First Samurai 64, a remake in the vein of Tomb Raider of some Commodore 64 games called First Samurai. The game was canned after the developer went back. Freak Boy, one of the most interesting and bizarre platform games developed by Zone Incorporated and set to be published by Virgin. The protagonist, a sort of robot called the Freak Boy, in order to stop the invasion of some evil aliens called Zoes on his home planet Hadron, had to use his morphing abilities to absorb various objects and morph his body. It was described as a three-dimensional action-adventure with an abstract graphic style. Unfortunately, the publisher, Virgin, asked to remake the game at least 3 times, and no version satisfied them, so the game was cancelled. A prototype of the game was found and dumped, and what can I say? It's good from what I've seen. The soundtrack is really good. You can rotate the logos. Someone has seen the intro as Super Mario 64. There's Superman 64 Fog and oh yeah, the character can morph as described. Good. Forever Dragons or Dragons. Yes, it's spelled like this with a Z. A fighting game similar to the first Dead or Alive. The opponents could be knocked out of the arena through various hazards in the arenas. Software Creations, the developer, for the 50th time, spent months to motion capture moves and adjust them in the game. The planned features were really advanced for the time, and if released, it could have been a revolution in the genre. Some of the features included leveling up and update the abilities of the fighters, swapping characters in fight, large arenas, like really large, and bets. I mean, sure, why not? Other features were also planned, but the game was just too ambitious for the console and was cancelled. Frank Thomas Baseball or Frank Thomas Big Heart Baseball. A port of Big Thomas All-Star Baseball that only released on PS1, Saturn and PC, but the N64 version was scrapped. Frogger 2 Swampy's Revenge. A port of Frogger 2 released on PS1, PC and Sega Saturn. A prototype of the N64 version was found and dumped. Future Company.
Who?
Ghouls and Ghosts 64, aka Makaimura 64, a 3D action-adventure game similar to Super Mario 64, set in the Ghost and Goblins series. Showed to the press in 1996, the game was cancelled after the poor sales of the N64 in Japan. Some ideas of the game were used in Maximo Army of Zin, released on PS2 in 2001, which is basically a Ghost and Goblins interlude, like look at this. Glover 2. A sequel of Glover. Yes, the game where you control a living globe was supposed to have a sequel. Anyway, the game was almost completed when it was abandoned. The reason of the cancellation is actually pretty funny, or pretty sad. It depends on your view of things. The game sold fine, but Hasbro, the publisher, for some other reasons, ordered the double amount of copies that were supposed to be sold, leaving the company with 150,000 copies that nobody wanted. Hasbro, already struggling with poor financial reasons, took a look at the poor Glover 2 and decided to cancel it, without remorse. 2 prototypes were found and dumped. Supposedly also a Dreamcast version was being developed, but it went nowhere. The game is a more of the same of the first one, and the game is good. Nothing to say really. Golgo 13, a sequel to an NES game based on the manga series by the same name. Despite being 75% completed, the game was completely abandoned without explanation. No footage resurfaced. Go-Karts, a realistic kart game developed by DMA Design that was cancelled early in development. Groundwave.
Who?
GTA 64. GTA was supposed to have an N64 game. The game was cancelled after the developer realized that releasing GTA on a console for kids wasn't a good idea. Oh well, this infamous screenshot is thought to be from a prototype of the game, but it's a fake. In reality, GTA 64 was just a part of the first game on N64. Gun Turret Legend, a shoot-em-up game that we're not even sure if it even started development. Half-Life? No, it simply isn't possible. Harrier 2001, a serious flight simulator by Paradigm Entertainment, the same ones of Pilot Wings 64. You had 20 levels or missions, and you could choose between a combination of 50 crews. The correct combination would be essential to the completion of the mission. You had a variety of weapons and supported up to 4 players. The plot of the game was surprisingly similar to the plot of Top Gun. Jack Cross is on a mission to avenge his best friend killed by terrorists, and in the meantime stopping the same terrorists from building the biggest bomb ever, made to make kaboom. Harrier had amazing graphics for the time, but that didn't stop the game from getting cancelled. After some delays and legal issues, the publisher, Video System, stopped funding the game, leaving Paradigm with no other option except to cancel the game. I guess Paramount didn't like Jack Cross. Tassire Bokonoma, an animal simulation game which little is known about. It can be translated to Run My Luma, but I don't know. Hype Time Quest, a game set in the world of the toys Playmobil, a sort of Legos if you don't know. The game only released on PC and on PS2. Apparently also a Dreamcast version was planned but scrapped early on. Humans, Hyperdrive, Hypersteering.
Who?
Ikazuki no Gotoku, aka Like a Thunder Go, a game based on the ancient board game Go, cancelled for unknown reasons. International Rally Championship, a mysterious rally game that went into development hell for a few years and then was cancelled. Gem Extreme.
Who?
Jeff Gordon XS Racing, an arcade-style racing game that would ultimately release only on PC. A PS1 version was being developed, but it got cancelled with the N64 version. Jest, a strange but promising platformer similar to Super Mario 64 or Rayman 2, but with its own style. The game featured a Joker named Jax, who has to work his way up to full jesterhood. The game had beautiful graphics, and there were many crazy levels centered around different themes like amusement parks, cities, hell, and others, and Jax had various powers, but it was cancelled for financial reasons, which is a shame. For the limited footage that we have, it seemed like a really promising game. The cancellation took its developer with him. Jetball, a tech demo of a futuristic Pong game. The demo was made by the same guys who did the Birdie tech demo. Like the other demo, it was probably never intended to be a full game, and you don't have any footage of it. Joust 64, aka Joust X, a game that was probably similar to the 3D Robotron game. Jungle Bots, probably one of the most interesting projects on the list and one of my favorites. Jungle Bots was said to be an FPS with robot animals. The game was unfortunately never completed due to a multitude of factors. The graphics were limited due to the game being on a 32MB cartridge, and the company who was making the game was developing its first ever game, and they had no experience. Though, interestingly, the company was experienced with designing and building theme park attractions. Why am I bringing this up? Let me tell you something. On June, I found an obscure video of the game. It was high quality and uploaded to YouTube by a user called New Entertainment Group. As soon as I found it, I immediately posted on the N64 subreddit, but no one responded. This YouTube channel had other videos, and these videos are from theme parks rides or animatronics. Now, this is just speculation, but what if this person is one of the developers of the game? I'd like to contact him, but there isn't any way of doing that, given that he doesn't have a mail. and they always disable comments. So, New Entertainment Group, if you're watching this video, please comment down so we can negotiate the price of the prototype. Please! Emperor of the Jungle, aka Junguru Tatkei. Emperor of the Jungle was said to be a tie-in video game to the famous manga Jungle Emperor Leo for N64 or N64DD. I'm not quite sure, so I put here. The game was being made with the involvement of Shigeru Miyamoto and Makoto, the son of the creator of the manga, Osamu Tezuka. It was announced in Space World 1996 and shown at Space World 1997, and at the time it had breathtaking graphics and was going to be a faithful adaptation of the series. N64 says that it was a Zelda-like game, but seeing the footage I think it was intended to be a platformer, even Gaming Journal agrees with me. Unfortunately, the game was cancelled for internal struggles, mainly because of some issues with Makoto. Miyamoto wanted him to direct the game, but he couldn't because he was busy with other projects, and he was very inexperienced with video games. The development may also have run into problems caused by the Nintendo 64 itself. In the end, the project was quietly cancelled. What a shame. Jurassic Park 2.
Who?
Cameo Elements of Power. The Xbox 360 exclusive Cameo Elements of Power, developed by Rare, had an exhausting development cycle which spanned into 4 different consoles. The game originally was planned out on N64, a Pokemon-style creature breeding game that was then ported to GameCube. When Microsoft bought Rare, the development of the game restarted on Xbox and abandoned the Pokemon-like aspect. The game was finally moved on Xbox 360, where it became a launch title for the console. We don't have anything of this N64 version, but we do have some footage of the GameCube version. From what we can see, it looks similar to the finished product, at least in the surface. Cameo can still transform into various creatures and use their capabilities to advance in the game, like the final game. But she can evoke copies of the creatures. A health bar is present on the enemies, by the way. The bosses were bigger and the arenas in which you would battle them were larger. You could collect more than once the same creature via this thing, an UFO. The levels look really large, although a bit verbose, and well, Cameo is completely different. This is basically a completely different game from the release product, and well, this isn't good because I don't want to play it. Like every single game on this list. Kasparov Chess. Probably an early incarnation of Virtual Chess 64. Kirin Daiichi's Accident Pies.
Who?
Kirby Ball 64. So, you might be familiar with a Kirby name called Kirby's Air Ride, and is a Kirby racing game released on GameCube, but it originally wasn't supposed to be on that console, and was originally a different game entirely. Development started out as a sequel of Kirby's Dream Course, called Kirby Ball 64. Not much is known about the game, except for these brief footages. We can see that Kirby is in this wall state, in this polygonal place under hell, and 4 players could jump in and play simultaneously. And there are the stars, which are similar to the ones of Kirby 64. And what do we have here? Oh, Kirby with a skateboard. Hey, you know what this reminds me? Kirby's Air Ride. Kirby Ball 64 later evolved into Kirby's Air Ride on N64. We don't know much of this version either, and why it evolved in this game, but it seems like that we were lucky enough to get this game on GameCube. This game looks slow, which isn't supposed to happen in a racing game. At least the aerobics seem cool. Many characters are not in the final game, and Kirby has this cool 180 hat. I like him. It's speculated that the physics were used in 180 snowboarding, which you should remember from before. Anyway, games look cool. I would like to try it one day. Klepto. A cancelled action stealth game where the protagonist used the grappling hook as the main weapon. Although the premise sounded cool, you would control a burglar cat in a sci-fi world and you could complete the levels in various methods. It reminds me of Blinks. The game was cancelled. Apparently, a prototype was displayed at E3 1999, but no images or videos resurfaced apart from really early concept arts. Development was briefly ported to the GameCube before being cancelled for good. Kyle Petty's No Fear Racing. Perhaps a tech demo based on a SNES game with the same name. There isn't any proof of its existence. Little Encounter, a promising arcade-style tank and flight and possibly strategic game. It was developed by Digital Image Design, a British software house that had earned its place in the market with its cutting-edge PC flight simulators and training programs for the military. Yes, the military. The plot revolved around aliens trying to conquer Earth via poisoning it. What a genius plan. Unfortunately, Ocean, the developer, was bought by Infogrames, and many of the key members of the team got laid off, leading to its cancellation. Lobo, a 2D fighting game based on the comic series. It probably never entered development. Looney Tunes 3D.
Oh!
Looney Tunes Space Race, a racing game featuring the Looney Tunes characters. The game eventually released on Dreamcast. MM's Adventure, Search for the Lost Formula. A part of that fantastic game of MMs, but it's far better that it didn't release. A shameless rip-off of Crash Bandicoot that plays like garbage on my N64? No thanks. Magic Flute, an action game supposedly in development by Sunsoft. Magic the Gathering Armageddon, a game based on the famous card game. Development didn't get far. Michelin Rally Masters, Race of Champions, Test Drive Rally, Rally Masters. Originally announced as Rally Masters, it saw a name change after the developer, Rally Interactive, was bought by Infogrames to Test Drive Rally. The game was cancelled after Infogrames stating that the N64 and Dreamcast versions needed to meet the internal standards, even after IGN said positive things about it. Marionette, or Marionette, I don't know how I should pronounce this. A mysterious Mario game where all the Mario characters were puppets. Yes, puppets. We don't know anything beside this. The development was shortly after put on GameCube before being cancelled. Mega Man 64 2, the sequel of Mega Man 64, which was a part of Mega Man Legends. It was cancelled because of the poor sales of the first one. Metal Gear Solid. You could probably guess why this was cancelled. Metroid 64. So, does it seem weird that Metroid never received an N64 game besides Smash Bros? Well, it should be. Nintendo was trying to make a new Metroid game and approached several companies to make one, but everyone said no. I said companies because they approached more than one. We don't know which of these were involved, but through some interviews they were probably Rare and Rockstar Games. Martin Wakely, who was the head of Rare's design team at the time, said that he vaguely remembered discussing a Metroid game in the boardroom, but he's not sure. Oh well, probably it's for the best. Could you imagine a third-person platformer with Metroid? I prefer Prime. There's also another theory that states that Metroid 64 was Prime. But on N64, but it was then ported to the GameCube because development was lagging behind. Well, we will probably never know the answer. Mini Racers and Tamiya Racing 64. Developed by Looking Glass Studios, Mini Racers was going to be a game similar to Micro Machine 64 and RC Pro AM. These little radio-controlled cars would have raced into little trucks. Mini Racers was basically finished and was even sent to Nintendo, but having no response from them led the game to obscurity. A prototype of the game was found and dumped in 2012. Tamiya Racing 64 was simply a tech demo of what Mini Racers was going to become. This has also been dumped. Mission Impossible 2. A sequel to the mediocre Mission Impossible game was planned but then cancelled after Infogrames bought Ocean. Mission Impossible Operation Surma released on GameCube, PS2 and Xbox, and might have used some elements of the game. Mumratu Festival, a game made by Konami. We literally don't know anything else besides it was going to be another entry in the Mumratu series. Monster Dunk, an arcade-style basketball game with monsters in place of regular men. It reminds me of Space Jam. Montezuma's Revenge, a sequel to Montezuma's Revenge that was eventually only released on PC. It was supposed to have a multiplayer mode that supported up to 4 players. Moon Jelly. Moon Jelly is a cancelled game developed by Software Creations. For the millionth time, yes, I think that, which went into various development cycles. Initially, it was supposed to be a sort of tech demo that was meant to create a protagonist, create a plot, and create a unique art style for the company. the game started to take shape, and slowly became a self-funded 3D platformer. The project was shown at various gaming expos, and the journalist that saw the game said that the graphics were fantastic, and the game seemed like a Tim Burton cartoon. Sadly, the game was cancelled due to the software creations developing too many games at the same time. Really? I would have never said that, considering the 4000 cancelled project from before. In the end of November 2022, a VHS with footage from a very early version of the game was found. Mortal Kombat Special Forces. Remember Mortal Kombat Special Forces? I wish I didn't. Nintendo had the same thought and decided to cancel the N64 version of the game, probably after realizing how atrocious the game was. Mystics, an action game that had 4 wizards fighting in an arena. The game never passed the prototype phase. Apparently, some prototypes have been sent to Nintendo for approval, but the company didn't find them attractive enough. Whatever that is supposed to be. The game was going to have a WiiWare version for the Wii in 2008, but that version was cancelled too. Need for Speed 64, a Need for Speed game that was cancelled and then used as a base for Beetle Adventure Racing. NHL Blades of Steel 2000, a cancelled NHL game. I didn't find other infos on it. NHRA Drag Racing, a cancelled drag racing simulation game which apparently was only released on PC. I guess Nintendo cancelled it for the excessive violence of that kind of racing games. Nightmare Creatures 2. The sequel of the first Nightmare Creatures was released on PlayStation and Dreamcast. An N64 version was being developed, but was quickly scrapped after the poor sales of the first game on N64. Ninja 64, an adventure game featuring a ninja, but nothing else is known about it. Ninja the Dark Hearts, another ninja game? Oh well, it seems we have even less infos on this one. It was a ninja game running with the same engine of Thieves, and focused on stealth. Nintendo Golf, a golf game that was developed by Nintendo. The game was cancelled after Nintendo saw the potential of the developer Camelot Software Planning and hired them to make Mario Golf, cancelling Nintendo Golf in the process. We can suppose that it was a remake of Golf from the NES. Nomen Quest, just an early name of Aideen Chronicles. ODT, Escape or Die Trying. ODT is an action-adventure game released on PS1, developed by Psygnosis. A version for N64 was close to completion before Psygnosis was bought by Sony, bringing the game to the Shadow Realm. A nearly finished ROM of the game was found and dubbed. Oechi Gengaro Ika. There aren't many infos on this game, but a prototype of the game was sold in 2005. Who's that lucky person? Nobody knows. From the few screenshots available, the game seems a family simulator, where the player had to monitor the mood of a Japanese family, or to make them happy. I'm envisioning this in my mind like a Tomodachi Life game. Little edit. Apparently, more infos and screenshots were discovered. You play as Kokutsu Okochi, the eldest son in the family. Quick quizzes or decreases the emotional parameters of the 3 family members. Mother, dad, sister, and maybe baby, I don't know. The situations that would have happened in the game were completely absurd and out of logic. From the dad poisoning everybody with a curry prepared with dynamite, to the mother and sister freaking killing each other for a TV. Also, strangely enough, the game was intended to be on N64 DD, but the product was found in another N64 development cartridge, so I don't know. Onimusha Overloads, an extremely early version of the game that was later released on PS2 and Xbox. On and Off Racing.
Who?
Palladium.
Who?
Panel de Pon 64 aka Tetris Attack 64, a sequel to Panel de Pon or Tetris Attack in American regions. The game was reworked in Pokémon Puzzle League for America and Europe, while in Japan it was revived for GameCube and released as part of Nintendo Puzzle Collection. Pikmin. Pikmin originally started out as an N64 game. The game originally had flat character models like Paper Mario to help the N64 weaker hardware. Pilotwing 64 2. Remember Paradigm? The same ones of Hero 2001 and Pilot Wings 64? Perfect! They were also developing the sequel of Pilot Wings 64, but it got cancelled pretty soon. Pitfall 64. A 3D entry in the famous Pitfall series was being developed briefly for the console, but was cancelled. It's unknown if the game became Pitfall the Lost Expedition on the next generations of consoles. A similar gaming concept was released on PS1 with the title Pitfall 3D. Pod. Pod is a futuristic racer that was released on PC. An N64 version was planned but was never released. Power Slide. A cancelled port of Ratback's futuristic racer. Does that sound familiar? Premier League game. I don't know. Pro AM 64, the early version of Diddy Kong Racing. We talked a bit about it back in the D section with Dinosaur Planet. It originally was going to be an action strategy game, but it didn't last long. The concept then evolved in a platform racing adventure game, with working titles such as Wild Cartoon Kingdom and later Adventure Racers, where it seems the playable characters would have been able to wander around outside of their vehicles in a theme park-inspired hub world like Crash Tag Team Racing. In the meantime, Keith Bayliss and Chris Steelstone worked on a The Lion King inspired adventure game prototype that had a very early quadruped version of Timber clambering around over terrain. And my boy, you look weird. Then the game abandoned the on-foot part and focused only on the racing part and was renamed to Pro AM 64, making it a sequel to the NES series. When presented to Miyamoto, he suggested to put Diddy Kong in the game, dropping Timber. If I had a nickel for every time Miyamoto suggested to change main characters to rare, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's rare that happened twice. And the rest is history. You know what? This is the only time that I'm happy with the choice of putting Diddy Kong in the game. Because, you see, this game is iconic, and without him it probably wouldn't be the same. Well, if the plot is found, it would still be interesting, but making a Kong game was the right decision, at least for me. Good job, Miyamoto. Project Dream. Project Dream was the first stepping stone which later became the masterpiece of a game that is Banjo Kazooie. Project Dream started out as a SNES RPG set in a fantasy pirate world, using the same engine as the DK Country games, but a little more advanced. It had breathtaking graphics for a SNES game. It looks like a PS1 game. The protagonist was Edison, a boy with a sword that got in trouble with the evil Captain Black Eye. The game was moving along on SNES, so the game was ported to N64 and for a brief period on N64 BD. The game now was in full 3D, but lost the magic it had on the SNES. The team took a look at a prototype of Super Mario 64 and began to work on a new project from the ground up called Banjo Kazooie, and the rest is history. Some footage of the both version, except the N64 DD version of course, were released on Rare's official YouTube channel, and a full voice acted clip from Black Eye was also released by Tim Stamper, co-founder of Rare, who also showed that he still has a prototype of both versions. Captain Black Eye was also featured in Banjo Kazooie as an NPC. Now, PK is one of my favorite games of all time. I'm even writing an iceberg video on it, but I'd love to see what this early version had to offer. Let's hope that in the future we'll find a prototype. Heck, it happened to Dinosaur Planet, why wouldn't it happen with these two? Puma Street Soccer, a street football game that was only released on PS1. And maybe it was for the best, like what kind of graphics are these? Puzzle game. The title is so original that trying to find info on this game is impossible, given the multiple things I want to find in the genre of puzzle games. It was probably just a code name of a puzzle game that was cancelled early in its development. Quest 2, a sequel of Quest 64, cancelled because of the poor sales of the first game. The game was going to be set 100 years after the first game and had 2 playable characters, Leon and Sophia, a magician and a swordswoman. Both characters would have gotten a sidekick known as the Guardian, and they could use it as a vehicle or to help in battle. Quest for Camelot, one of the first games announced by Titus. Quest for Camelot was going to be a game based on the Warner Bros. Animated movie. It also had a planned expansion for N64 DD. The game was supposed to be released in 1998, but was pushed back to 1999 for the competition with Zelda? Yeah, sure, not because the game was collapsing behind doors, but because the dying game needed time to compete with one of the best game ever. Apparently, they've also described that the Game Boy Color version of Quest for Camelot was maybe as good as Zelda GB. Sure, believe that. Radical Bikers, an unconfirmed version of Radical Bikers for N64. Red Pink, Reason, Rebel Moon Rising, Robbers,
Who?
Rampage Through Time. The third entry in the Rampage series was supposed to have an N64 version rather than only being released on PS1. Raze was going to be an action game developed and produced by Interplay for the PS1 and probably the N64, but was cancelled. Red Baron, a 3D remake of the popular PC game. We're unsure the development actually started. Redemption, a really obscure but interesting cancelled action-adventure game. From the information that we have, it seems that the project could have been revolutionary for the time. It mixed different genres and viewpoints together, FPS, third-person, isometric platformer and open-world exploration with vehicles. From what we can gather from the interview between PC Zone magazines and Cranberry Source, the developer, the plot was weird to say the least. A mad serial killer scientist is gifting beats onto you, and the whole game took place in your head. Rated E for everyone, folks. It was cancelled probably for being too ambitious or too dark. The Reign of Cats and Dogs, a mysterious cancelled N64 game made by Paradox Games. They tried to show the game to various publishers in order to get a contract. We haven't got many infos, but we have some screenshots taken from the website of one of the developers. It seems an action strategy game in 3D. The screenshots aren't taken from the N64 but on PC. The game sounded fun, but no publisher were interested, so the game was cancelled. Renegade Racers, a part of a PC game called Renegade Racers. Resident Evil 0. You remember Resident Evil 0 for GameCube? Good! The game originally started out as an N64 exclusive game and went pretty far into development, but was cancelled because of the GameCube and because of the limitation of the 64MB cartridges. Actually, almost nothing was lost, because the N64 version and the released GameCube version are basically identical in the sprouting characters. Well, except for the graphics, they are more pumped in the GameCube version, obviously. Return Fire 2, a cancelled port of Return Fire. Rev Limit, one of the most popular, hyped-up games for the N64. Rev Limit was set to be an arcade racing game similar to Ridge Racer, in development for the N64 DD, but quickly downgraded to a normal cartridge. In 2016, a prototype version was sold on Yahoo Auctions in Japan, and the new owner shared footage of the game, but he didn't leak it. Why? Ask him. Ridge Racer 5, a port of Namco's game that probably evolved into Ridge Racer 64. Rika, defined as an N64's Tomb Raider, Rika was going to be a new killer application for the N64, mixing third-person shooter to exploration. The plot involved the protagonist, Rika, fighting against both humans and monsters for, well, it doesn't matter. Rika had impressive graphics and a complete and engaging story, and puzzles to solve. Unfortunately, Rika was delayed for development issues and in the end it was cancelled. Shame, it could have been really cool. Edit. Our proto was found! Let's go! 3 ROMs of the game were leaked on April 2024 by an anonymous ex-Beat Studios employee. The ROMs are not completed in the slightest. Most enemies don't work, many things like menus and maps are broken as hell, but it's still interesting. There's a tutorial level and the art style is really cool. One of the most interesting things found in them is the fact that Rika isn't the only protagonist. In fact, there's also these two. Robocop. You might recall that a few years back, a tech demo of a cancelled PS1 game based on Robocop was found. My guess is that at one point the game was said to be on N64 too. Robotech Crystal Dreams. Based on the anime Robotech, which fused 3 different animes, Robotech Crystal Dreams originally started out as Robotech Academy, where the cadets of the anime would battle in large arenas. It quickly changed its idea and became Robotech Crystal Dreams. After Doug Lanford joined the development of the game, changing the game from simple battles to a full-on space combat simulator for N64. Now, the game featured the entire solar system, and the actions of the player influenced what was going to happen in the game. Many of the characters, weapons, and vehicles of the anime were implemented in the game. Unfortunately, due to many issues, the development was slowed down. The N64's limitation, small financial resource, and Philips Media going bankrupt are only some of the reasons of the cancellation. The game was 90% completed, but it didn't stop Robotech to be cancelled. An early version of the game was found and dumped, but it's early, so it's full of bugs and it doesn't have all of the interesting features announced by the developers. Rollerball, a tie-in game to the eponymous film. The game was cancelled after MGM Interactive, the publisher, went bankrupt. The game was canned really early in its development. Ronaldo v Football, a game starring Ronaldo that was only released on PS1. Roswell Conspiracies, Aliens, Myths and Legends, an adventure infiltration game that followed the story of the cartoon it's based on. The game was released on PlayStation. Roto Gunners, cancelled helicopter simulation game. The development has been stopped by Techmagic without giving an explanation. Sapphire, aka Young Olympians, an ambitious 3D beat-em-up featuring descendants from gods of the Greek mythology. It later evolved into Barbarian, game that was released on PS2, GameCube and Xbox. Sea Duo High Cross, another N64 title in development by Vertical Entertainment. It was going to be released on PS1, N64 and Game Boy Color, but only the PS1 received the title. The N64 version would feature 8 characters and 8 authentic Sea Duo PvC to choose from, 10 courses containing shortcuts, hidden areas and breakable objects. The N64 version was showcased at UT 2000s. Only one track was playable. Instead, choppy frame rate and sound of collision weren't implemented yet. The game got delayed and was going to be released in spring of 2001. The Game Boy Color version was completed and also was meant to come out in spring. However, the game never released, probably because Vertical didn't want to gamble with its release on N64. The GBC version was found. Shadowgate Rising. Planned to be a sequel to Shadowgate 64, this action game developed by Infinite Ventures was cancelled due to the GameCube. We have a brief synopsis of what was going to be the plot of the game. Centuries after Shadowgate 64, the belief in magic has faded, but the unspeakable evil of Cal Thorley has slowly become to reawaken. The fate of everything lies in a young woman, who gradually discovers strange powers and control magical artifacts within the halls of Shadowgate. The game was also going to release on PC, but in the end neither versions were finished. Smurfs 64, a cancelled platformer starring the Smurfs. No footage or screenshots exist. Soccer 64, Soldier Blade.
Who?
South Park 64 2, a cancelled sequel to the South Park FPS on N64, cancelled because of the end of the system's lifespan. Space Shuttle Project 64. I have no clue about this game. Space Shuttle Project was a game for the NES, so maybe this was a sequel? Spooky. First revealed in 1997, Spooky was going to be an action game similar to Freak Boy, which we saw earlier. We had to save a bizarre alien planet from the invasion of the Archmorphs, an ancient race that survived a major disaster. In the few screenshots that we have, it seems that the graphics are probably taken by a PC version of the build, given that they look too nice to be an N64. Like Freak Boy, the protagonist could mutate in different forms to fight better and resolve puzzles. In the levels, there were going to be 30 pieces of a mirror, and with that, we could be able to absorb and morph in one of the Archmorphs. Sadly, the game was cancelled because no publisher was interested in the game. What a pity, it seems fun. Sports Immortal, a futuristic racer that was cancelled because Acclaim refused to found it. We only have some concept arts. Spy Hunter Millennium / Spy Hunter Returns, a 3D installment in the Spy Hunter series. The development was taking too much to make, so Midway, the publisher, cancelled it. StarCraft 64 German version. For some reasons, the German version of StarCraft 64 was never released. Why? Street Fighter X. I don't know. Believe it or not, a Street Fighter game was being developed by Capcom for the console, but was cancelled pretty quickly and was only released on PS1. Surf Assault, an arcade racing game that featured different creatures. The game was postponed on the PS2, but either versions were scrapped, although we have some concept arts of the PS2 version. Survivor Day 1, officially announced at E3 1998. Survivor Day 1 was an action game developed by Konami. The protagonist of the game had to escape a spaceship full of mysterious aliens. The protagonist could also perform various actions like climbing, jumping, swimming, and so on, to explore the sections of the spaceship. The gameplay probably included some puzzles to resolve. Konami said that the aliens would have reacted realistically to the player's actions. In the end, some issues in its development caused many delays, and the game wouldn't have released before the death of the N64, so Konami decided to cancel it altogether. Also, the graphics looked bad. Simcopter 64. Presented in the very early stages of development at E3 1987, Simcopter 64 was going to be a part of Simcopter, with some special features on the N64. However, at its presentation, the game received negative reviews, with people pointing out the annoying fog. Maxis, the developer, moved the project on N64DD, but since the N64's add-on was delayed, the developers lost faith in the project and decided to cancel it. A prototype of the E3 version was found recently and dumped. Sydney 2000 Olympics, an Olympic trials game that has released on PC, PS1 and Dreamcast, but not on N64, even if the N64 version was almost completed. A ROM was found. Toka Touring Car, probably a version of the game for the N64. Tartakovsky, Nutcracker, the music game. The Nutcracker has a video game? Thieves Sword. Developed by the same people of Rika, which we saw earlier, Thieves Sword was a stealth game that was ultimately released on PS2 with the title Roadblocks. The game was a different thing entirely from the finished product, and we even have some footage of the early PS2 version in action, but unfortunately on the N64 version we know next to nothing. Tornado, aka Turrican 64. Action game / third-person shooter that was in development at Factor 5 as a spiritual successor to the Turrican series, but with some inspirations from Metroid. It reached the tech demo stage until it was put on hold to make the team focus on Star Wars Rogue Squadron. The reason of the name change from Turrican 64 to Tornado was because they couldn't settle on agreement with the rights owner of the Turrican franchise. The game had also two protagonists, a male and a female, but it's unknown if the choice between the two could affect gameplay, like Resident Evil 2. There were also made some concepts to show how the game would have looked on N64, but after many delays, the game was moved to GameCube and then cancelled. Tiny Tank.
Who?
Title Defense, a boxing game that was going to be released on N64, PS2 and Dreamcast, but was cancelled on all systems for unknown reasons. ToeJam and Earl. The third installment on the ToeJam and Earl series was going to be on N64, but was cancelled after the post-release of the systems and of the two previous games in Europe. It would finally be released on Xbox. Tommy Thunder. Third-person shooter that was set to be published by ASC Games. It was originally developed for the N64 in 1997, before moving over to PlayStation, but would never see release on either of the two systems. A password-protected.zip file of an N64 build was encoded on an anonymous FTP site run by Player One Studios in late 1997, which was publicly accessible. The game is very early in development, if it wasn't clear enough. You can't do much here besides walking and exploring a buggy landscape. You can shoot at giant spiders and they can die, but you can't. You can jump and that's about it. But it's understandable, it's very early in development. The game was cancelled after the publisher went bankrupt. Also, it's just me, or this game is similar to Banjo Kazooie, like look there's even the giant monsters. Don't Panic, a wacky brawling game where 4 players could jump in and play simultaneously. It was set to come out in late 2000, but was cancelled after the developer, Bottom-Up, went bankrupt. We don't know much about the development of the game. In fact, we know about its existence via the found prototype. Like as I just said, the prototype was found, but like Tommy Thunder, it's very early in development. The AI isn't present, half of the characters aren't even here, they have placeholder names, and they have FF8's profile pictures placeholders. What? But even if it's very early, the wackiness is still present, if this even makes sense. I'd have loved to see this game completed. It could have been great. Top Gun 64. One of the first N64 games to be announced. Top Gun 64 later became Top Gun Fire at Will on PC and PS1. It was probably canned because it was seen as an economic risk, and they decided to move the project on other platforms that were more cheap to develop on. Probably, the release game on PSX and PC was not the exact same one of the original N64 console. Trick Style, arcade racing game that would only release on Dreamcast. Before we begin this section, I want to clarify something. Many of these games have Ultra in the title. This is because many of these games were being developed when the console's name was Nintendo Ultra 64. Got it? Okay. UEFA Soccer 98, one of the earliest announced football games on N64. Development was taking too much, and in the end it was cancelled. Ultimate Racer, untitled hockey game.
Who?
Ultra Baseball 64, a cancelled baseball game. Ultra Descent, an unreleased entry in the Descent series. It would have been an enhanced version of the first game with new levels and maybe a multiplayer mode. Ultra Engine, aka Ultra Primitive Man. Designed to be a 3D platformer game rendition of the PC Genshin universe, the game has been cancelled during its development. Some elements have been reused in Bomberman Hero. Ultra Load Runner. Trying to guess, it would probably have been a sequel expansion OG version of the game. Vampire Circus, a gauntlet-like type of game full of vampires and zombies planned for N64 by Z2, who started working on it in 1996. The game was designed so that you control just a single character out of the 5 in the party, and the others would be under AI control, although you could switch which of the 5 characters you were controlling. Each had different skills and abilities, so there was a good reason to swap your control between different characters, and it was also possible to lose members of your party to the vampire horde, so you could only control members of the party that remained alive. A playable prototype was made, but when Infogrames took over Ocean, they forced the team to rework the game into Tails Express, after Infogrames bought the license from Warner Bros. Velocity, VR Golf, VRS Racer.
Who?
Velvet Dark, a briefly developed spin-off of Rare's Perfect Dark. A few months before Perfect Dark's release, a few programmers started developing a spin-off game that involved Joanna's sister, Velvet. Velvet was actually playable in Perfect Dark as a multiplayer character, but her relationship with her sister was never detailed. The game would have been a third-person stealth action game, and would have had the intentions on focusing on her backstory. Not much else is known, and almost nothing has been done with the game, since it wasn't even green-lighted in the first place. Velvet could apparently use a sort of serum to get new abilities, and there was also compatibility with a possible portable version of the game on GBA. After the announcement of the GameCube, the Velvet Dark team, when developing the also failed Perfect Dark Zero for GameCube, that would resurface in a completely different way on Xbox 360. Viewpoint 2064. One of my favorite titles in this list. Viewpoint 2064, also I like title like 2064, those guys are genius, was supposed to be the sequel to 1992's Viewpoint for Neo Geo. Sammy, after developing the Sega Saturn and PS1 versions of the original game, were ready to develop the sequel that would release on N64. It was showcased at Space World 1999, but then mysteriously disappeared, probably for the planned later release on N64. It reappeared in 2015 when a YouTuber acquired the prototype and uploaded 7 minutes of footage from the game, but he didn't release it. After 5 years, in 2020, Proto was dumped and even reviewed by Hardcore Games. The game is similar to Star Fox 64. You have a linear path and you basically shoot everything you see on screen with a tracking system like Reds. You have 15 stages and you can also take secret paths. The game is completed and you can play from start to finish without problems. Oh, and the soundtrack is great. VIP, No, wait. The closest thing I could find is a cancelled action adventure, I think, Xbox game? We don't know anything of this game. I don't know. Okay, now you can.
Who?
VR 3000s. It was an early incarnation of Scars. VR Powerboat Racing. VX Vampire XDB-7, a cancelled port of a party game released on PC. It had good graphics, because it ran on PC of course, with Paradigm stating that the Ultra 64 was capable of handling those graphics. Believe it. When Paradigm signed a deal with Nintendo to develop Paradigm 64, the port's production was put on hold to move all of the developers on development on Paradigm 64. But when the game was completed, the company separated to develop other games, and the port was simply not completed. War Final Assault, a cancelled port of Atari's first-person arcade shooter. War Ball, a dodgeball game? What? War Spirits, a third-person action game in development by Candlelight Studios for N64 and PSX, cancelled because developers didn't find a publisher interested in the project. Waterworks, a mysterious puzzle game. Weekins, a 3D platformer featuring 2 characters, cancelled because no publisher was interested in the project. Wet Corpse, a cancelled competitor to Resident Evil in development for the N64 and Sega Saturn. There aren't any infos on it. Wicked, an action-adventure game by Viz Interactive, the same ones of Earthworm Jim 3D. Good sign. A design document was found by a video game collector but was never released. Wild Metal Country, a strategy game that only released on PC and Dreamcast. Wild Water World Championship, an early version of Renegade Racers, was supposed to release on N64 but was cancelled. Wild Waters, another Looking Glass Studios game. It revolved around kayaking, if that makes sense, down rivers. Wild Water 64 was very promising, as the Looking Glass team was able to create an engine with real physics for the waterfall that would have went down the river, but it needed more time, which eventually ran out. 5 different gameplay modes, including the arcade, time trial, championship, finals and versus battles, were planned for the game. However, some months later, on May 2000s, Looking Glass Studios went out of business during a financial crisis related to their publisher at the time, Eidos Interactive. Wild Waters / Extreme Kayak vanished forever, along with their other promising N64 racing game, Mini Racers. ROM was found and dumped. Winnie the Pooh, an adventure game with Winnie the Pooh. Okay. WWF Warzone, not this, 2, an early incarnation of WWF Attitude. Extreme Roller, a rollerblade game that would only release on PS1. The fact that it released on October 2001 on PS1 is the reason of the N64's version cancellation, too late into his life. X-Men Untitled Game. In addition to the X-Men Mutant Academy game, there was going to be another one, but we don't know anything about it. X-Men Mutant Academy, an enhanced version of the PS1 version for N64. Xena Princess Warrior adventure game.
Who?
Yoshi's Racing, a mysterious pitch for a 3D racing, maybe, Yoshi game. The game was developed by Argonaut Software. It was cancelled because Nintendo didn't want to risk and give the license of a Mario game to a developer that isn't Nintendo, and so rejected the pitch. Yosuke Iide's Mahjong School. I hope that I pronounced it right. A Mahjong video game centered around teaching new players how to play the game. The game was approximately 90% completed as of August 1999 and scheduled for release in the following December, but never ended up releasing it in any capacity. Before we continue, I forgot some games during the montage of the video, so this section is dedicated to them. Clan Wars, a strategy game with players controlling either an attacking or defending force in each battle, spending resources to either build up their forces or fortify their position. While intended for 1999 release, the game was subsequently cancelled. Dragon King the fighting game. Basically the original Smash Bros, but instead of the Nintendo characters, there were just random guys. The concept of throwing characters in the TV border is the same. We recently got footage of it. Killer Instinct 1. Remember the original trailer of Killer Instinct that still makes me shiver?
Available for your home in 1995, only on Nintendo Ultra 64. Killer Instinct.
Yeah, that one. The game was supposed to release on N64, but the delay of the system made the game release on the SNES. Killer Instinct 3, a prequel of Killer Instinct where all of the characters were children. The game would have gotten full 3D graphics this time. Golden Sun 64, a cancelled entry of the series on N64, nothing is known. Independence War 2, Edge of Chaos, a cancelled port of Independence War 2 on N64. Beetle Adventure Racing 2, a cancelled sequel to Beetle Adventure Racing. Harry Potter. In short, Nintendo tried to acquire the rights to the Harry Potter franchise and promised to make a game every time a book was released. The license was denied after J.K. Rowling, the writer of the Harry Potter books, gave the license to WB to make movies rather than first-party Nintendo games. Maximo. The PS2 game Maximo was supposed to release on N64, that's it. Game Zero, an interesting game made by some ex-Red employees. It can be described as a precursor to Minecraft. Yes, Minecraft. It was cancelled and then ported to GameCube, but cancelled for being too ambitious for the console. Gradius 4/Gradius 64, a port of Gradius 4 on N64. Cancelled because Konami wasn't satisfied enough with the sales of the N64. This next section is dedicated to the games which we only know the title and don't know if they were planned for the console. This is different from the unconfirmed state because we don't know if they were real to begin with, so these games can be described as rumors. But I wanted to include them anyway just because this is a video which contains every cancelled N64 games, you know. Let's speed up. Air Force Delta, Ace Combat 64, Animal Forest USA and European versions, Army Man Green Rogue, Back to the Future 64, Buzz Lightyear Star Command, Chrono Resurrection, Captain Commando, Crayon Shin-Chan 64, Croc 1 and 2, Darkstalkers 3, Daytona USA, Daytona USA 2, Battle on the Edge Power Edition, Daytona USA 2001, Daytona Die Hard Trilogy, Digimon World, Disney's Dinosaur. Oh, how many are these? Digital Horse Racing, Digital Sports Newspaper, Driver 2, Evil Zone, Famicom Classic Volume 1, GTA 2, Hello Kitty 64, Hercules Action Game, Hero Quest 64, Home Alone 3, Independence Day, Canon, Lemmings Revolutions, Major League Soccer, Man in Black 2, Mirror House Cornflakes, Augie and the Cockroach Street 64, Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, Shantae 64, Samurai Showdown, Shacktizer Treasure Hunt, Shin Megami Tensei 64, Space Jam, Spider-Man 2, Stuart Little 2, Super Smash Bros 2, why me? Stupid Invader 64, why stupid? It seems like some stuff that SMG4 would make. The Grinch, The Misadventures of Trombone, Who is Trombone? The Secret of Nima 64, Tomb Raider 64, Tom and Jerry 64 on Racing, Untitled Konami Fighting Game, Untitled Nickman Graphics Beat'em Up Game, and Wall Guy. Oh my god! And now, for the moment we've been all waiting for. The N64 DD Cancelled Games! First off, what is a DD? The N64 disk drive, or dynamic drive, abbreviated in DD, is an expansion of the N64 that can be attached to the bottom of the console. The peripheral reads magnetic floppy disks and has a rewritable data storage, a real-time clock, better audio, and the possibility to go online, at least at launch. It was announced at Shoshinkai 1995 to compete with the PS1's discs, but it was released in 1999 after many delays and was severely underpowered. The peripheral only received 9 games, technically 10 if you count the modem cartridge before being abandoned. The peripheral sold less than 50,000 units and was a commercial failure. Due to this, it's now a rare item. Many games were proposed, but due to the flop, they were either released on a normal N64 cartridge or on the GameCube. However, some games weren't that lucky. With planned expansions and many interesting and ambitious cancelled games, this section will be very long. So, let's begin! 7th Legion. 7th Legion is a real-time strategy game released on PC. A completely different version for N64 was being developed for the N64 DD. Epic Games, yeah, the Fortnite ones, and the MA Design were developing it. Unfortunately, with the launch of the peripheral, the game vanished from the horizon, never to be seen again. No footage exists. Automobili Lamborghini, a planned expansion for the game. It's unknown who was the developer. Blades of Passage. I don't know if putting this game into this category was right, because a bit of development was also done on the normal N64. Oh well, too late. Blades of Passage was going to be one of the launch titles for the N64 DD in the USA. After the cancellation of the American version of the DD, the title tried to move on a normal N64 cartridge, and then to the GameCube, but never saw the light of day. It was an action RPG. You can imagine it like an expansion of the Secret of Mana series. We have some screenshots and that's it for this game. Would have been cool? Yes! This game doesn't seem bad at all, at least for the ambience. The characters are weird. Anyway, I hope a prototype will be found. It looks interesting. Cabbage. For lack of footage, I'll place this Cabbage. Cute, right? Cabbage was a castle breeding simulator game that was going to use the N64 DD to its full potential. The game was developed by Shigeru Miyamoto, Shigesato Itoi, Tsunekazu Ishihara, and later Satoru Iwata. The game was announced in 1997 as a game where you were able to raise, feed and carry around a creature called the Cabbage. The game would use the N64 DD's internal clock to keep the Cabbage guy and its world running even if the console was turned off. You could also transfer the creature to your Game Boy. There were DLCs which would give the creature toys and so on. So, a very ambitious project. Why was it cancelled? Well, for once, the developers were also busy with other stuff. Itoi was developing Mother 3, and Ishihara was supervisioning projects at the Pokémon Company. Also, it became apparent that the N64 DD was a commercial failure, and Cabbage, which was going to release at least in the late 2000s, couldn't make a profit in any way. What an unfortunate destiny for such a promising game. The game influenced Nintendogs and Animal Crossing, so at least that's something. It's speculated that the Dreamcast game Seaman was influenced by this game. Little Edit. Apparently we found the protagonist of Cabbage is this thing right here. Okay, I prefer the Cabbage. Communication game.
Who?
Creator. Creator is a mystery. It was an entry in the Mario Artist series, but without the Mario in the title, and was going to be developed by, you guessed it, Software Creation! My god, the game can be described as a huge playground where the player could mess around with textures, physical sizes, and personality of the animals that inhabited the place. You could also change the animals that were present in the island, there's a T-Rex here. It had good graphics, but there were problems. Nintendo of America and Nintendo of Japan were fighting over who was controlling the project. In the end, the Japanese division won, and rejected almost every idea of the project, transforming it into the Mario Artist series. The Sequencer. A music composition software. It was probably cancelled for the competition, in big quotations, with Mario Artist. Desert Island 64, aka Super Real Island. An interesting project made by Imagineer. The player would control a shipwrecked person that had to survive in an unknown island. The game was really complex. You would have interacted with the evolution chain of the island, so with animals and plants. It was going to be a mix of platforming, survival and life simulator. Nothing else is known except the screenshots taken from a very early build. Also, one of the early gaming journalists that talked about the game was Italian magazine, so I'm proud of you, my country. Doraemon DD. Doraemon is a shoot-'em-up game in which players create their own levels. An expansion for the DD was planned but never released. A prototype was supposedly acquired by someone. Diablo, a cancelled port of Diablo 1. It was cancelled probably for the limitations of the console. DT Bloodmasters. Another interesting project. It was a card collection game where players could connect with the GB version of the game and traded cards on the internet via Runnet. The game was displayed in a non-playable form at Space World 1999, but only some images resourced and not even of the game, just a cartridge. Digital House Newspaper.
Who?
Dragon Warrior 7. Development started on DD, but later got released only on PS1. Fire Emblem 64, Maiden of Darkness. At one point, Fire Emblem was going to have a game on the DD console. That's it. We don't know anything apart from this screenshot, taken from Space War 2000, and that the game was reworked in the GBA game Fire Emblem The Binding Blade. Also, I just translated this image with Google Translate, and the guy who's speaking is saying that he's fantastic and he always goes hiking in the mountains. Now, why? Of all of that was developed of the game, why would you take this screenshot? Just why? Take a screenshot of a battle, I don't know! Why? Mario Artist, Game Maker, Graphical Message Maker, Sound Maker, Video Jockey Maker. Several Mario Artist games in development for the system, cancelled for the previous games not selling enough. Metal Slayer Story 2, a prequel to the visual novel with the same name. The many delays of the DD led the game to morph into a remake of the first game on the SNES. Mother 3 Earthbound 64 expansion. Yes, when Mother 3 was ported to a normal cartridge, it was discussed the idea of having an expansion for the DD. The cancellation of the game canned this expansion too, of course if it even entered development. Namco RPG.
Who?
Jack and the Beanstalk. The first stage of development of what became Pokemon Snap. We don't know anything of this early iteration. Pokemon 64/Pokemon RPG, an unknown Pokemon game that was going to release on the DD. Project Cairo, an RPG using various comic book characters. It was developed by Crave and Big Rain, a developer that was bought by them to develop the game. Unfortunately, the game never passed the concept phase. Oriental Blue. Oriental Blue is a cancelled RPG in the Far East of Eden series that was in development by Hudson and Red Entertainment for the N64 DD. Oriental Blue was announced by Hudson in some Japanese gaming magazines, as one of the few RPGs planned for the console, but with the failure of the add-on, the game was quietly canned, and Hudson never shown any official images from the game. A few years later, in an interview published on the Japanese Nintendo website, Kaori Shirozu, director and designer at Hudson at the time, explained that the project was resurrected and redeveloped as a GBA game and finally released in 2003 as Oriental Blue. Our no Tengai. The Nintendo 64 DD version of Oriental Blue would have probably looked like the GameCube remake of Tengai Makyo Chu Manjimaru, also released in 2003, with 3D low-poly environments and sprite-based characters. Super Mario 64 2, a sequel of Mario 64 developed exclusively on N64 DD. It was going to have multiplayer and was one of its main features. Only a level was created, but no footage exists. It influenced future Mario games and non-Mario games, like Galaxy and Pikmin. Super Mario 64 DD, a somewhat recent finding and the only DD game that was found and dumped. Displayed during Shoshinkan 1996, Super Mario 64 DD was Super Mario 64 but on the DD. There aren't any changes aside from slightly better quality for the music, longer loading times because it's on the disc, and it's impossible to collect all of the 120 stars because the regular boss fight crashes the game. It probably was intended to be just a tech demo, but it's fascinating anyway. Super Mario RPG 2. Yes, the original version of Paper Mario was supposed to be on N64 DD. Superman 64 DLC. Yep, you heard that right, but we don't know anything, and it's probably for the best. Tails 64. A pet simulation video game that was similar to Hey You Pikachu, but in place of Pikachu, we have this dolphin bird abomination called Pinkling. Yes, Tail was the name of the planet. It's possible to become friends with this thing, and was completely different version from the original PC version. Toucan Road Brave Spirits add-on, an expansion for the game. Wall Street. A stock market simulation game in development by Nintendo. Nothing is known beside this. Unreal 64. A cancelled port of the PC game to N64 DD. Cancelled for the limited space on the disc and financial reasons of the publisher. Ultra Decay / Donkey Kong 64 DD. The original version of Decay 64 was to be on N64 DD and was similar to 3 country games on the SNES and GB. Ura Zelda. When Zelda Ocarina of Time switched development from N64 DD to N64, many dungeons, enemies, items, etc. were scrapped. But Nintendo didn't want to scrap all of this stuff, so they began developing an expansion called Ura Zelda, that was meant to restore these unused things and remix dungeons and almost everything. Ura Zelda was completed, but after the commercial failure of the console, the expansion was cancelled. Nintendo, not long after, released Zelda Master Quest, an expansion of Zelda Ocarina of Time for GameCube, with also the N64 Ocarina of Time version ported to GameCube. But Master Quest only remixed dungeons and never restored the cutscenes. After many years, the Nintendo Giga Leak happened, and files containing the expansion were found. The logo was found, and also some dungeons, but this is only an early version, and it's incomplete. Well, at least it's something. Oof! I did it! Yeah! Woohoo! Woo! This video was difficult to make, to say the least. I'm working on this video for like 7 months. This last recording is like made the 11th of May, and yeah, I don't know what to say. I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a like and comment. Subscribe, please. I worked very hard on this thing. And well, we'll see you on the next video.